Welcome back. Today we're gonna show you a comprehensive step-by-step Spring Boot and MySQL guide to continuous integration using Gitlab-CI, Docker Compose on VPS. In this Spring Boot and MySQL guide, we will implement part of DevOps in Spring Boot applications to continuous integration using Gitlab-CI, Docker, and deployed to VPS such as Digital Ocean Droplet, AWS EC2, Microsoft Azure, Vultr, etc. This tutorial divided into several steps. Step number 1. Set up Docker Hub repository. Step number 2. Prepare a VPS with Docker and Docker Compose. Step number 3. Create a new Spring Boot and MySQL app. Step number 4. Dockerize Spring Boot and MySQL app. Step number 5. Set up GitLab and Gitlab-CI. The goal of this continuous integration is very simple. It just tests, builds, and deploys the Spring Boot and MySQL app automatically to the VPS, Digital Ocean Droplet, AWS EC2, Microsoft Azure, Vultr, etc. after a push to the GitLab repository, so the user can use this application via a browser that's served by the Nginx HTTP server while the development in progress. We assume you already have Docker Hub and GitLab account, so we are not cover how to register or sign up to Docker Hub and GitLab. Let's get started with the main step. Step number 1. Set up Docker Hub repository. To set up a Docker Hub repository, go to hubdocker.com, then log in using your account. Click a Create Repository button on the Docker dashboard page. Fill the repository name and make it private. Then click Create button. Now the Docker Hub repository is ready to use. We will use the Docker command later in the GitLab and VPS. Step number 2. Prepare a VPS with Docker, Docker Compose, and GitLab Runner. We assume that you have the fresh VPS from your provider, such as Digital Ocean Droplet, AWS EC2, Microsoft Azure, Vultr, etc. and able to connect to it via SSH. Ours is using Digital Ocean's Droplet, so I just need to add my SSH keys to the VPS. First, create a new SSH key using this command. Leave the passphrase blank by click on Enter a few times, and you will see this console for successful SSH key generation. In DigitalOcean, we can access the VPS through the console. Just start the Droplets console in the DigitalOcean dashboard. Then log in using the provided root username and password. Next, edit the SSH authorized keys file. Back to your terminal. Then show the previously created SSH public key. Copy the content of SSH my VPS ID pub, then paste to the authorized keys in DigitalOcean's Droplet console. The other ways to copy the pub key is using SSH copy ID command. Next, try to connect to the VPS using the SSH from your terminal. To prevent SSH access using root password, open SSHD config file, then find the password authentication line and change the value to no. Try to exit the VPS and log in again using SSH. After editing the SSHD config file, restart the SSH server. Now the VPS is ready to use for Gitlab-CI CD deployment. Next, we need to install Docker Compose, and GitLab Runner in the VPS. For that, save these commands to update the existing default list of Ubuntu packages. Install package to let apt transport over HTTPS. Add JPG key. Add Docker repository to the apt source. Update again the list of packages. Install Dockerize from the Docker repository. Check the status of installed and running Dockerize. The successful Docker installations will show the output like this. Next, try to log in to Docker using your Docker username and password. Now Docker login should work. Next, to install the Docker Compose, simply run these commands. Now, Docker and Docker Compose are ready to work with Gitlab-CI. Step number 3. Create a new Spring Boot and MySQL app. As usual, we will create a new Spring Boot and MySQL app by generating the project using Start Spring.io. Fill in the required fields and write the button and select the required library as described in this example. Then click the Generate button. The initial Spring Boot project is downloaded. Extract, then move to your projects folder. Open these Spring Boot projects by your IDE or text editor. Some IDE will automatically resolve and downloading dependencies when the project opens. Before configuring the MySQL connection, first we need to create a new database and user for this tutorial. We assume you have installed the MySQL and or MariaDB server and client. Run these commands from the terminal to enter the MySQL console. Next, read the database and its user using these MySQL commands. They are already user and password for this tutorial. Next, configure the MySQL connections by open and edit src man resources application properties. Then add these lines of MySQL connections parameter. Also, we need to configure the embedded database for tests because there's no MySQL server in the Gitlab-CI jobs. That create a folder, a property file, and a test folder. Fill that file with these H2 database connections parameters. Next, create a package and a simple model or domains or entity class with RC main Java. Then replace all Java code with this. Next, create a package and simple repository class. And make it as interface file. Then replace all of this interface. Next, create a package and a simple REST controller class. Then replace our controller class with this. Next, run the application by clicking the play button in the IDE or type these commands in the terminal. If there's no error found, that means the Spring Boot MySQL app is ready to deploy. Step number 4. Dockerize Spring Boot and MySQL app. While your IDE still opens and the Spring Boot MySQL projects, add this file to the root of the projects folder. Add these lines of Docker commands, which we are using Docker Open JDK image, same JDK version as the previously generated Spring Boot app. The following to save the Docker image set to TMT directory of the host or VPS. A port using standard Java Web App exe erg jar file means the build jar file saved to the target directory with jar extension. Copy and entry point should point to the Spring Boot jar file name exactly as the artifact ID and versions in the POM XML. Next, to simplify the Dockerize, every server runs the Spring Boot application on VPS. We will use Docker Compose. For that, SSH against to the VPS, then create a Docker Compose YML file. In the home or default root directory. Then fill that file with these Docker Compose parameters. We use Nginx as an HTTP reverse proxy for the Spring Boot app. The Nginx container uses image from the Docker repository. So the configurations, we use a spread file. That create a new folder and Nginx configuration file. After, save this Docker Compose file. Then fill that configuration file with these lines of Nginx configuration. Save and exit the editor. As you see in the Docker Compose file, that configuration file will copy to the Nginx container to this directory etc nginx conf d. The Spring Boot container uses a Docker image from the Docker Hub repository. For MySQL, we will run it using the docker run command because we have an error using Docker Compose for MySQL. So we will create an environment variable file to load MySQL root password, database, user, and password. Type this command to create it. Add these lines of MySQL parameters. Save and exit the editor. To store the MySQL data in the host volume, create a new directory. Next, run the Docker commands for MySQL by type these commands. To check the running MySQL Docker container, type these commands. Step number 5. Set up Gitlab and Gitlab-CI. To set up the Gitlab repository and Gitlab-CI or CD, log into gitlab.com using your account or your organization's account. Click the New Projects button, then click Create a blank project. Fill the project slug name with Springboot, Docker image name as the Docker Compose file. Leave other option as default. Then click Create Projects button. Next, back to the terminal and Springboot Projects folder. Type these commands to add the GitLab repository. Next, back to the GitLab Projects dashboard and click the Settings CI/CD menu on the left navigation. Expand variables, then add variable. Enter all required variables that we use in the Gitlab-CI YAML file. With SSH private key value is the SSH key that previously generates before SSH to the VPS. Docker user and Docker password as the Docker Hub username and password. Docker repo is the Docker Hub repository that previously created. App name is the Springboot app name. Server is the VPS IP address. Next, we need to install the GitLab runner in the VPS. SSH again to the VPS. Then type these commands to add the official GitLab repository. Install the latest versions of GitLab runner. Next, back to the GitLab CI/CD settings. Then expand the runner. Copy the registration token in the specific runner. Then back to the VPS and type these commands to set up the runners. Enter GitLab instance URL https://gitlab.com. Enter the registration token by paste the previously copied token that press enter. Enter the description for the runner. Enter tags for the runner. Enter executor, VirtualBox, Docker, SSH, Bash Machine, Kubernetes, Parallels, Shell, SSH, Docker plus Machine, Custom, Docker, SSH, and choose Docker. Enter the default Docker image. If you refresh the GitLab settings CI/CD runners, you will see the runners activated for this project. Next, back to the IDE or text editor, we'll create a new file in the root of projects folder. .gitlab-ci YML. Fill the GitLab-CI YML with this. We are creating 4 stages of GitLab CI/CD. First, test the Spring Boot app, then build the Spring Boot app to jar with the Docker and push the image to the Docker repository, and SSH to VPS, then pull the Docker image from the Docker repository and run Docker compose. Next, commit and push the updated Spring Boot app with GitLab-CI YML file. If the GitLab-CI job's working, you should see these are the checkout for all stages in the GitLab CI/CD pipelines. To check the deployed Spring Boot application, back to the VPS by SSH, then type this command. You should see this Docker container running up and healthy. Finally, you can check the application by accessing it through the VPS IP address. In the terminal, type this URL, pause commands after exit the VPS SSH. Successful response should be like this, and you get the request to the API. Successful response should be like this. That is the Spring Boot, MySQL, Nginx, Gitlab-CI, Docker on VPS tutorial. You can get the full source code at the article link in the descriptions below. Thank you.